Hello and welcome to Lesson 2, the nervous system. In this session we're going to look at the divisions of the nervous system. We're going to look at the somatic and autonomic subdivisions, and we're going to explain how information travels from the brain through to the peripheral nervous system and vice versa. What are the main divisions of the nervous system? What is the nervous system comprised of? The structure and role of the peripheral nervous system will be looked at. We will distinguish between the somatic and autonomic, and we'll identify branches of autonomic nervous system as well. The nervous system is comprised of billions of neurons. The brain is the central processing unit. Now, although many areas of the nervous system can operate more or less independently, we looked at reflex arcs before that do not require instruction from the brain. It processes information in the brain from the sensory receptors. These can be found in the skin, the eyes, the ear, and so forth. And information is carried along what is referred to as afferent pathways. So before we talked about sensory neurons carrying information from the senses to the central nervous system. This pathway is called the afferent. Now this is distinguished from the efferent pathway, which takes information from the central nervous system to the muscles, commands, signals to the muscles. So one way to think about it is efferent is about engaging, it's about effect, so it's action, whereas afferent is about sensing. Relay neurons connect these two systems, and the brain is made up mostly of relay neurons, actually. Sensory, motor and relay recap. Remember our fellow doing a bit of cooking. He touches the pan, it's hot. Information from sensory receptors in the skin travel along the afferent division, the sensory division. And then an action via a relay neuron is signal is sent to do something. In this case, pull your hand away. This is sent along the efferent division. A signal via a relay neuron is also sent to the brain saying, ouchie, that hurt. So we have these afferent and efferent division. Effect, motor, afferent, sense. The nervous system. The two main divisions of the nervous system are the central and the peripheral. Peripheral means on the outside. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system consists of the motor neurons, the sensory neurons, somatic and autonomic divisions, and the autonomic division, which is about fight or flight, consists of the system that engages it and one that calms it down. We'll look at each of these in turn. To begin with, the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. The brain is made up of a number of different structures. Now, it's always difficult to decide how you actually divide the brain up. I think in many ways it's much easier to find independent structures in other organs in the body. The heart has your ventricles and your atriums, and one's on the left and one's on the right, so we tend to divide it in terms of geographical location. We do the same for the brain, but it's much more difficult to do this. So one way we can divide it up is based on more or less functions. So we can say, for example, there are different functions in the brain, such as vision, or morality, or higher cognitive function in mathematics, and we can say, well, this area of the brain is responsible for that, and this for that, and so forth. Each region is made up of billions of neurons, or we may actually divide it in different ways. We may say, where is the most uniform areas of the brain that all more or less look the same, and divide it up that way. The simplest way to divide the brain is in three ways, breaking it down into three structures. The forebrain, this huge pink structure here. The midbrain, which is this little structure in the middle, and the hindbrain. the hindbrain, the forebrain, and the midbrain. Now, the hindbrain is made up of the medulla, the pons, and the cerebellum. The cerebellum is responsible for things like balance. The midbrain makes up the brain stem. And this is responsible for carrying signals from higher brain regions up here to other parts of the nervous system. The brainstem contains formations important to sleep and arousal, and also heads some of the autonomic systems. We'll come across the brainstem again in a moment when we talk about fight or flight. The cerebellum is related to control of fine movements and so forth. So, hindbrain, midbrain, and cerebellum. These are not necessarily discrete structures. The forebrain, which is the largest division, actually is made up of a number of different structures and consists of most of our higher functions. We have the diencephalon, which I'll show you in a minute, contains the thalamus, which is responsible for receiving nearly all sensory information, and the hypothalamus, which controls the pituitary gland, responsible for fight or flight and the endocrine system functioning. The diencephalon and the telencephalon can be seen here. The telencephalon essentially is this huge structure here containing both cerebral hemispheres. You can only see one here. The diencephalon is this structure here. The telencephalon also contains the limbic system, the basal ganglia, and the cerebral cortex. The cortex being this sort of outer layer. The limbic system has the hippocampus, which you can just about see here, and also has the amygdala. So the limbic system is really important for memory, especially emotional memory. Basal ganglia functions such as movement and control, and cerebral cortex. This is the highest cognitive skills we have in the cortex. Things like language, problem solving, and so forth. So that's the central nervous system. The brain, the brainstem, dividing it into the hindbrain, the forebrain, and the midbrain, and then the structures within those. The second division then is the peripheral nervous system. This consists of 31 spinal nerves. It has both efferent and afferent pathways, and the spinal pathway can be divided into two. So we can say that the peripheral nervous system has two main divisions. The somatic nervous system, which is responsible for deliberate movement and sensation, and the autonomic nervous system, over which we have very little direct control, conscious control. Somatic nervous system then. This is made up of the afferent and efferent divisions. As you can see here, a receptor sends information along the afferent pathways made up of sensory neurons, relay neurons in the central nervous system and spinal cord, then relay information to motor neurons, the efferent division, which does something about it, moves a muscle or some such. Deliberate movement and control is the responsibility or utilizes the somatic division. The autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, is concerned with the regulation of the internal environment. It works on the principle of homeostasis. When hormone levels or rise too high, it will switch off the taps essentially, and then until the levels get low enough, and then switch it back on. There are two divisions here, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic, psychological calm, low heart rate, blood pressure, and restored digestion. We call this rest and digest. And then the sympathetic is responsible for initiating our fight or flight response. These branches are normally in balance. One slightly goes up and the other goes up, and they're just balancing. However, a threatening situation can trigger the sympathetic nervous system to kick in and produce huge amounts of cortisol and adrenaline and so forth. So that is the nervous system. We looked at the central and the peripheral and some of the subdivisions within it. Sort of exam questions you might get asked are: outline the role of the central nervous system. Using your knowledge of the nervous system, explain the following. Sappho is scared of bees. She is calmly eating her ice cream. when she spots an enormous bee buzzing around her. She becomes tense, alert, with her breathing becoming shallow, and is starting to sweat. Ellie, who is not afraid of bees, swats it. Slowly, Safa slowly calms down and is able to resume eating her ice cream. Here we've got afferent and efferent divisions. Afferent divisions relaying in the information, accessing memory perhaps, triggering the fear response, the autonomic nervous system kicking in, increasing her blood pressure by constricting veins, directly stimulating increased heart rate, high levels of cortisol and adrenaline and cascade that occurs there, switching off digestion and so forth, why she feels nauseous. So the idea of this question is you've got to tailor every single element of that to something in the stem. Hopefully you found this useful. Just to recap, the nervous system has two divisions, the CNS and the PNS. Within the CNS, the brain and spinal cord, the peripheral nervous system consists of the somatic and autonomic. Somatic have afferent and efferent divisions, neurons consisting of sensory, relay and motor, and the autonomic has two divisions, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. It's marked by homeostasis and fight or flight. We've looked at the nervous system. Hopefully you find this helpful. As always, it's been a pleasure, and I will see you around. Bye.